Hello, this is the Coach and Benway show. I'm Coach Red Pill, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway. And Dr. Benway, it's a pleasure, as always, to be speaking to you on this wonderful Saturday. Well, we're talking on Saturday. I don't know when this episode is going to be airing. I think on Monday. So anyway, great talking to you on Saturday. How's it going?
It's moderately okay to talk to you today.
It's moderately. Oh God.
I'm just going to throw a little curveball into this conversation. No, it's fine. It's wonderful. It's early for me, but I'm an early bird.
Yeah, no, it's 3 p.m. here in Kharkov, Ukraine, and before we get started, we were shooting the shit about Elon Musk, and we're both of the opinion that Elon Musk is just going down the tubes. That something is very rotten in Denmark. You want to talk about that a little bit for our audience's sake?
Sure. You probably heard us talk about it twice now. And I think the recent, and it's hard to distinguish one article title on Elon Musk from the other these days. They seem to collectively be around the idea investors are probably not getting the whole picture of what's going on there, to put it bluntly, or to put it politely. I said, to put it bluntly, they would say Elon Musk is certainly putting the veil over you and as to what's really going on. I think it's pretty straightforward what I think, which is there's only so much time left for Tesla to, one, make the case that it actually is doing something that's going to be beneficial to investors, aka make them money. And if it doesn't, say goodbye to Tesla very quickly.
Yeah, because there are basically two ways to have the cash in order to operate. Either you sell your product at such a margin that you generate a cash flow enough to continue your operations, or you bring in cash from investors. Now, we've been talking about this a few times. There are a lot of tech companies that basically have been depending on investor cash in order to survive. Netflix, Uber, Tesla. And the new investors, they bring in fresh cash, and this fresh cash is used for operations. But there comes a point where you run out of new investors. The dumb money is all used up, as it were. And look, the signs are just fucking bad for Elon Musk. We both follow Zero Hedge, right? But and Zero Hedge has been talking for over a year that Elon Musk is about to circle the drain. But for the first time, I get the vibe that he really is about to circle the drain, because things are just not looking on the up and up. And I have no inside information. This is idle speculation, but I suspect that it might emerge that something weird, something very funky is going on inside Tesla. I mean, do you get that vibe, Benway?
Not exactly that way. I mean, let's put it this way. I don't get the vibe that there's like a Theranos style scam going on. Like there's a fundamental, real, fuck these assholes, we're going to steal their money kind of way. The vibe I get is more, you got a certain group of engineers kind of out of control. By that, I mean, everybody has this idea of, I'm going to make the perfect, amazing car that does all these beautiful things. Everybody will love it. It'll be the greatest status symbol. But it's a diversion against the main mission, which is you're going to have to make money. And part of the way you do that is you have to be able to deliver this kind of car to a larger group of people than you've been able to before. And I think you just are letting too many people get away with shit. And I think people are distracted. I think the fact that Elon Musk found a new pretty girl certainly isn't helping. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's a distraction from doing everybody's job. More so than I think everybody's kind of scamming me, per se. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you don't think it's a scam, but you don't think it's a scam, but you think that something's funky, right?
Yeah, it's like it's fundamentally not running as smoothly as people want, and I think it's not. I don't mean that in a light way either. I think they're on a course to failure, and they don't recognize that.
Yeah, I think that Elon Musk knows it. Okay, when he had that disastrous call with the analysts, that was a fucking bad sign. And when he started bitching about short sellers, like I was telling you before, and I'll repeat myself for your sake, for the sake of the audience, rather. If I'm the CEO of a company, of course I'm going to own like a big chunk of the company, a lot of shares in the company, right? And I hear that there are a lot of short sellers. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the opposite trade if I know that my company is healthy. If I know that my company is healthy and there are a lot of short sellers, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to take the opposite side of that trade, and I'm going to make out with like a bandit when the numbers finally come out. I actually don't know if that's legal or not, but you know what I'm saying.
Well,
Uh,
like I said, because you're not going against your shareholder value in that. In fact, you're enforcing it or trying to strengthen it. I fail to see how it could be illegal.
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that if somebody's complaining about short sellers, then there's something wrong with the company. Traditionally, that's always happened because healthy companies, the CEO shuts his mouth or ignores it because he realizes, oh, the short sellers are doing whatever. Who cares? The company's fine. Cash flow position is fine. Everything is wonderful. Nothing hurts. Screw them, and let them take the bloodbath that they're inevitably going to have. If they start complaining or saying shit like, "Oh, it's going to be the greatest short squeeze ever," or some nonsense like that, then I shake my head and I say to myself, "No, there's something wrong there." But so that's my feeling about Elon Musk. I'm very ambivalent about the guy. I think that there's always been that vibe that he's a snake oil salesman, But we'll see what
Well,
happens.
the partners in my there's a partner in my company who feels the same way about Elon Musk. He always wants to talk about it every so often, and it's largely because he's looking at the numbers. Per usual for a consultant, he's looking at the numbers. He's looking at the ultimate business case. He says there's nothing going to be there, so on and so forth. A lot of people I know in our crowd who like Elon Musk basically have this attitude, which is he's got a great vision and he's a entrepreneur that's actually looking at the right things, not the least of which is like space exploration and everything. And my response is that's like saying, like, oh, he's a good science fiction idealist. Why doesn't he just write books at that case? I mean, the fact that he's making cars that only elite assholes are going to buy, doesn't really help us get to space any faster. I'm sorry.
Well,
Just doesn't.
the idea that I always had was that Elon Musk, back when he released the Model S, Elon Musk should have approached Apple and say, "Why don't you guys buy me out? I'll sell you my shares for a stock swap. I want a seat on Apple. You get to have Tesla, and this will be a new product line for you guys. And aesthetically and in terms of guiding principles, we fit. This is a new product, a new direction for your company. You got lots of cash, so you're gonna be able to inject a lot of fresh cash into this business and expand it into the consumer car market. And because I've already done the proof of concept, I did the Roadster, I did the expensive sedan. They sold very well. So you guys get on board. You guys help me develop not just electric trucks, but automated trucks, which I think is the future business. That's a business that I'd get behind in a heartbeat. Automated electric buses, I mean trucks rather, and buses too. Why not? That business, that combination. I know prima facie, it doesn't. It sounds kind of crazy, Tesla and Apple, but think about it, and you start to see there's a logic to it, and it's a new product category that Apple could really get behind. And if he'd angled for that, I think he would have done very well for both Apple and for himself. Because the problem is cash. The vision that he has is just burns through cash. And I think eventually it could be a business, but I think that he's going to burn through all the cash before he gets to that level of sustainability, of business sustainability. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I don't disagree at all. In fact, I think the idea that Apple could have done something with the car and made it compelling, yeah, believe that as well. The biggest risk to me always with Apple on that front is two things. One, especially if you get into trucking and you try to get a solution that people want to build on and do their own little thing on. Apple's notorious for working with developers in that way because it's a closed system. But more
Yeah.
important than not, when you get into anything that involves services, especially you get into trucking, people want
Yeah.
various long-term analytics. Apple's a terrible service company, a very terrible service
Well, yeah,
company.
yeah, but the thing is, see, they are sitting on a mountain of cash, right? And I think that it would have been right up their alley. I mean, a big new product line that they can explore, because that's the problem with Apple. They don't have new product lines. They don't have new cash cows, and they need one, and they need a big cash cow because the iPhone cash cow, which lasted 10 years, well, it's slowly winding down. I mean, it's not winding down tomorrow. A lot of people said that the iPhone X was going to die and that was going to be that, but no, they sold a whole boatload of iPhone X's. The stock is as good as ever. Actually, let me go check the stock price right now as we're
Well,
speaking.
here's the thing to keep in mind with Apple, which I'm not as bearish as others are. you have to keep in mind, even though Apple's only selling about 10 to 20% of the phone market in terms of the profit pools, in other
That's
words, if you
astronomical.
take, yeah, they have 90% of the profit pools. So
Mm.
for those of you unfamiliar with this, revenue lines, if you take all of the revenue that phones have, that's a certain number. But if you take away all the costs element of building the phones, licensing, what have you, non-Apple phones are not making a lot of margin. It's
Yeah,
what, I don't know how many percentage points.
very very
Apple
slight,
has a
single digit.
lot of margin,
Yeah,
on those ones. That's why they charge so much. So when you add up just the profits altogether, the profits that the other guys make and the profits Apple makes, and you added that as a whole number and say, well, who has a percentage share of that? Apple has 90% of it.
yeah,
It's that
yeah. And
ridiculous.
the explanation for that is crystal clear. It's because of competition. Because in the non-Apple platforms, Android, and I think Microsoft also has a phone system, doesn't it? But it's minor, I think. But anyway, Android
Yeah.
phone for the smartphone, like there's all this competition from all these different phone manufacturers, right? That's why the prices are down and low, and the profit margins are so slim. Apple competes with Apple. It's a monopoly. That's it. iOS is just Apple. Okay, and they can charge whatever they want for their handheld phones. So yeah, it's incredibly profitable, and it will continue to be profitable. But I think that strategically, I'm talking long term over the next 10, 20 years, you want to have a big, chunky new product category that you can get behind, put that cash into, because sitting on that mountain of cash, what good is it? It's dead money. They should have used that to go out and create and buy a new category. And Tesla was obvious. I mean, I would suspect that it'll come out that they must have had some kind of conversation, and I'm wondering who torpedoed those conversations, because it seems weird, but then you start to think about it, and it makes a lot of fucking sense. And I
Well,
suspect that
yeah.
Musk wanted it. What?
Well, it also could have been Apple looked at. I could believe Apple looked at it and looked at the production line, looked at the numbers, said, "No, it's not going to work." The other, because here's the thing. I'm glad you brought up Apple because this is actually a topic I'm interested in. It's actually pertinent generally to this industry because Apple has the reputation as being the great innovators. The reality of Apple's innovation, as far as I'm concerned, all their innovation is different sizes of screen. If you look at all of their product line, it's about screens. There's a little bit of computer behind it, but a screen on your wrist, which is the watch, a screen in your handheld, situation, which is a tablet, or on a large side, or a phone on the small side,
Mm-hmm.
the computer itself. It's all variations on that. So naturally, I always joked that, well, the last thing they're going to be able to do is like a true Apple TV, not the little box, but an actual TV. It's hard to make money on TVs, but that's the limitation in my mind of what they've been doing thus far. They can only really
Yeah,
create variations of screen size and
yeah,
location of said screen.
yeah.
So yeah, that's why superficially you would say, oh, Tesla's out of the water for them, but it like actually kind of would make sense. It's a screen. At the very least, you could say, well, you could have a screen in the car now.
Yeah, and
But I
also
think it's more than that. Yeah.
yeah, and also the thing is Tim Cook, right? He is a master of supply chains of product logistics. He's a manager,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
the problems of Tesla are management problems, tailor made for a guy with Tim Cook's skill set. And Tesla, and what's his name? Sorry, not Tesla. Rather, Elon Musk. He's a visionary. He comes up with crazy ideas. Like the flamethrower thing. Well, yeah, it's a throwaway idea. It's trivial. Everybody wanted one, and everybody was willing to pop $500 for it. Okay, so that alone tells you that the guy is basically like he's a product guy. He's a guy who comes up with cool products, crazy products perhaps, but cool products, cool products that people want. I mean, shit, when I saw that thing on Philip DeFranco's show, I wanted one right away, okay? I had to sort of like control myself now and say, what the hell am I going to do with a flamethrower? But it was so goddamn cool. And that ability to come up with some incredibly compelling idea that everybody wants, that's golden. And that's what Apple needs. Yeah, I'm looking at Apple stock prices, right? Right now it's at 185. It's basically doubled in 2 years. It's just a steady upward swing. Okay, and everybody's saying that Apple's dying, blah blah blah. It's all bullshit. Apple's doing fine, and they're going to continue to do fine. Uh, and they are going to continue to be. They are the largest company on the planet. Is that correct? I mean, by
I
market
think
cap.
they have. It could be. I forgot. They were at one point. I've
Yeah.
I've since not kept up with that.
It doesn't matter. They're an incredibly successful company, and they will continue to be incredibly successful. But they don't have products, and the products that they have are, it's inevitable that they're going to start to grind down. I mean, that's my
Well,
thinking.
Well, here's the thing with a guy like Musk and the challenge of Apple trying to bring on Musk. Musk is the kind of guy who wants to run the show, right? And you couldn't and he's not big enough to justify it. If Apple were to have bought Tesla, like you said, he wants a seat on the board. It's like he's gonna want more than that. And he's also a guy who's not going to settle very easily with, like, chief product officer. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Especially when Ivy, or whatever his name, who's the lead designer at Apple right now, with regard to the Macs at the very least, is also in the wings, because those are the guys who are going to butt heads all the time. Not to mention between him and Cook. So that it's like that's a horse that's hard to keep on the range, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So I
but
think
but
that's
I
the
think that
challenge.
actually maybe that would have been a good thing for Apple. You know, I mean, look what Apple is plowing their cash into. They're plowing it into this huge campus that they're building. Right? What the fuck do they need that huge campus for? I mean, really, the offices that they currently have are not good enough. That they need to spend billions, literally, on some fucking campus. What? Why? Okay.
Well, when you house so many SJWs at once, you need to have a circular building to keep them going around and around and
You
distract you.
need a fucking panopticon. That's what that building is. But yeah, well, yeah. For those of you who don't know, the Apple building that they're building is like circular. It's kind of weird, kind of creepy. Yeah. So okay, look, about that. But pivoting a little bit, we're seeing more and more the successful companies. They are taking on SJWs like a sinking ship takes on water. It's kind of creepy. And I think that to extend the metaphor, all these companies are going to start to sink because of these goddamn SJWs, right? Um,
Well, I mean, that's I look at it this way. There's natural there's a natural evolution of a company from scrappy upstart, largely populated by people who get work done, up until the point where they're wealthy enough to.
to hire
This is gonna
incompetence.
the way I'm gonna phrase it is, quote unquote, take it easy. By that I mean you still have people producing and everything, but you're making kind of luxury investments in things that sometimes are smart, sometimes not so smart, sometimes what the fuck. This is where you start getting a lot of administration, and this is
Mhm.
where you say, oh, we need to be able to have this policy or that policy to make workers feel better. So that kind of balloons, and eventually you'll do things like buy buildings, or even invest in, like, oh, we need a chief equality officer or some stupid shit like that. What that ultimately is showing is that the burden of administration versus the productive element of the country, I'm not the country, the company, that ratio balloons in on the administration side so large that eventually the company becomes rotten, uh, unable to move quickly, burdened by its excesses, and then you're just managing
Mhm.
the steady cash flows until the end of the situation.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I just want to make a totally random pivot because it just popped into my head. The thing about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the chick who won at the Bronx primary, the socialist who won, and it's coming out that she grew up in Westchester County, one of the richest counties in America. I'm like laughing my fucking ass off at that. I mean, Jesus Christ, the chick is basically like an upscale girl. She's not Jenny from the block. She's like a little princess from the suburbs. And I'm like laughing my ass off, and that's inevitably the case. Why is it? Why is it that it's always like the upscale kids who turn out to be socialists? Can somebody explain that to me?
It's very simple. Look, what is the fundamental idea of socialism? The fundamental idea of socialism is that uh, there's something more to life than, in some sense, money, and then everybody's there's a way you can somehow, independent of the need to, like, earn and create, you can just give shit away without consequence. It's like, oh, what's the reason why I don't have green energy or solar panels everywhere, or this, that, or the other? It's like, well, it's just because someone's keeping it from you. There's a fundamental removal of thought there from how shit gets itself done, how things get built, how work how work gets itself done. Socialists in theory should have an appeal to people who don't have much and want more. The reality is, the only people who think that that's even conceivable are people who came from a position where they never had to worry about money or making good anyway, namely wealthy people and whatnot. It's like wealthy but stupid people. It's like, oh, I never really thought about economics, or, oh, I don't know how how my all this food gets into my house, but I have a lot and I feel bad about it because I guess some other people don't, and it must just be because the delivery man doesn't go their way when he comes my way. that kind of thing. And so that you mix a little bit of guilt and ignorance, which guilt and ignorance is almost the currency of the wasted children of the wealthier classes, and that explains a lot of it, I think. Because I'll guarantee I hung around a lot of socialists in my life.
Yeah.
One, because I was at the university, the university I went to, and two, when I was, hanging out with, a number of Marxists and everything, we always saw these folks, these wealthy socialists, wealthy Marxists, what have you. The and they were hated, trust me. But they always seemed to be everywhere and kind of half in charge all the time. This is not uncommon.
Yeah, but about Ocasio-Cortez, the fact that this socialist is running, I think that we're going to see a lot more socialists winning. And we were talking about it briefly, but I'll just repeat my argument. My thinking is as follows. The gerrymandering of the Republican Party over the last couple of decades worked very well. And we have some ironclad Republican seats that are untouchable. Right? And wasn't there a SCOTUS decision recently whereby the gerrymandering was declared constitutional?
I thought I saw that, but I don't know all the details.
No, neither do
But
I.
I mean, sure. I mean, I could I could buy that someone
Yeah.
thinks that.
Yeah. Well anyway, so the point is that gerrymandering worked for the Republicans, but on the flip side, it created these districts that are hardcore Democrat. And see, in those hardcore Democrat districts, a Trump supporter or a Trumpite, if you will not win because he's Republican, right? And that Trumpite is going to be critiquing the neoliberal establishment, the centrist establishment, and he will not win. So, who of the Democrats of the left, who is going to win? Who is going to be the one who is critiquing the neoliberal paradigm, the Clintonista paradigm? It's going to be the socialists, right? So, I think that just as in the gerrymandered Republican seats, you're always going to get Republicans. On the flip side, the Democrat ones, as the Clintonistas are being discredited, neoliberal Democrats are being discredited more and more every day. I think it's going to be the socialists who start to win, and this will further polarize the country. And Congress will start to fill up with diehard Trumpites or diehard socialists. And that is not a good thing. I mean, you see what I'm saying? You see the logic of it? Does my logic make any sense to you, first of all?
The logic makes sense. I would also phrase it this way, because I don't think it's just the one issue of ideology at play here. I think also what people have been noticing is that the Democrats will increasingly not be the party of white men as well. So who are the guys losing their seats? They're generally white men. A lot of them are moderate, but that's neither here nor there. In part because there's also a demographic situation at play. Octavia, it basically looks and represents most of the people in her district on that front. And yes, there's a certain degree to which ideological extreme certainly is going to play into it, but also there's, both ideological and demographic, which is this identity politics shit. Because even if you set aside the demographics, people are going to ideologically on the extreme left think that a white man can't do these things or is not appropriate for these things, so they'll be out there too. So I think you will get a net result. In addition to ideological differentiation, you will get what people have been suggesting is going to come, which is the Republicans will be the white party and the Democrats will be the colored party.
Yeah, but Texas is about to turn brown, majority Democrat, and it'll be like California. It'll be forever Democrat. So that means that perhaps Trump is going to be the last Republican president, and that's a scary thought.
This is why people have a strong opinion on immigration and the border.
Yeah, they want to win elections.
Even guys who, who you would never thought would articulate that are starting to get it. Like James Woods gets it. If you ever see, one of the actors I always miss that he's not making movies these days is James Wood, but the closest I get now is seeing him on Twitter.
Yeah,
and James gets it. He gets it.
Yeah, he got blown out. Hollywood will not hire him, which is a shame. He's one of the great actors. I mean, he is a fantastic actor. But yeah, he won't get hired anymore. And he said so. He said, I read a tweet that he put out this morning, as a matter of fact, or my morning at any rate, where he said, that he talks about his film career as something in the past. Now that is depressing because he's a great actor. And why is it that his politics are such that he cannot find a job today? I just find it just, And if that's the kind of world that we're going to be moving into, because well, we're starting to move into that, because now we have restaurants where if you have the wrong politics, you don't get served. We don't serve Republicans or people without shoes.
Well, it's funny because remember when I had said this is going to be, if we know what's good for us leads to survive this, it's going to become a tit for tat situation.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of happened in that restaurant. So those who remember the restaurant that refused to serve Sarah Sanders because she was part of the administration. Well, the woman who owned or ran that restaurant, I forget where, because of the protest, two things happened. One, she was forced to resign, or maybe she was, she did it on her own accord, but there was certainly compelling reasons for her to resign from whatever economic organization she was in charge of in the region. I don't know what exactly it was. I don't really care what it was called, but she resigned from it. And then I think the business had to close for a week or so because of so-called threats and protests, what have you. That's going to happen. That's going to continue to happen like that. I mean, is it
Yeah. Yeah,
is it unfortunate? Yeah, but I mean, I get, guess what?
yeah, but
If you're going to just sit back and just say, oh, we can't go into this restaurant. It's a pity,
yeah, but
then
it
you're not
turns out
going to
that that
successful.
woman who ran that restaurant, I don't know if she ran it or owned it, right? I think she
Yeah.
ran it. She followed because Sarah Sanders, Huckabee Sanders, went home with her husband. But the other people, her friends and family, presumably, I have no idea who they were, they went to a neighboring restaurant. I mean, just, across the street or something. And the
Yeah.
owner followed them and started heckling them from outside that restaurant. Okay. So,
Yep.
and then she said that it was because the LGBTQ, RSPT, whatever, people, and
Hmm.
don't forget the pedos because the pedos have rights too, well, she followed them.
LGBTQP.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she argued that it was because all the queers felt triggered by Sarah Huckabee Sanders' presence. I bet it was just she just made it up, and so you're going to have more. It seems to me that it's people in leadership positions, people who are in charge, who decide unilaterally and say, "Oh, I'm doing it to protect my queer employees," but it's really not. That's just the rationalization. It's just because they're so angry at that Trump won. Look, hard. I mean, I don't like Trump. Hard as I try, I cannot find a reason. I cannot find him doing anything that would lead me to conclude that the guy's a Nazi. That he's a troll, sure. That he fucks with people's heads, sure. But he hasn't done anything. I mean, looking at it, this vitriol, this hysteria. I'm just becoming more and more. I'm not expressing myself very well.
Well, here's the thing, and this is why I say it's ideologically motivated above and beyond just winning an argument here. People actually want one world or the other, and those who don't fit it are going to be removed from it. You can interpret what that means how you will. For example, this whole notion of in this restaurant, no Republicans can be served. I think that's going to happen. But here's the thing: it's at odds with their ideological stance. It's not well. I'll say it's logically at odds with the stance they had a few years ago, which is that bakery, that refused to bake the
Right?
gay wedding cake. It's like, how dare you? You have to bake the cake, fucker. That's their attitude. But that's the complete opposite logic of no Republicans are allowed to eat in my restaurant. My response was always bake the cake, motherfucker. And if
Yeah.
they, and if they want, they're going to have it both ways. They are actually going to have it both ways because they don't care about logic, because it isn't about, as I said, winning an argument. And this is why the Ben Shapiro's of the world thinks that just by pointing out the logical inconsistency, he's won and he can go home and jerk off. No, you've just merely recognized that they don't care about you, that they don't care about anything you have to say. And you have to, recognize that in order to deal with it. And is it going to get worse and you're going to see a lot more of that? Yeah, sure. I think so. And I remember someone in our video comment was saying, when I talked about the fact that there is going to be a civil conflict brewing, he said, it's not going to happen because unlike in the Civil War, the North, everybody in the North thought one way, everybody in the South thought another way. So this time everybody's mixed. So you'd be fighting your neighbor, and that's not good. I'm like, no, fuck off, baby. Have you ever seen, the Balkan crisis? It doesn't care if your neighbor,
Yeah.
is the opposite guy, and that means you're afraid to fight. No, it's just going to get vicious quicker and
Yeah.
quicker to your home.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. By the way, I'm watching the Ken Burns documentary. I'm on the second episode. Hopefully, I'll be on track to finish it by next weekend. Really, really interesting stuff. Uh, uh, but I'm kind of curious because it's sort of like skimming over the war. It's the second of 9 episodes that I've seen so far, and sort of like skimming through the war. And so I'm assuming that later episodes are going to take a deeper dive into the causes of the war and stuff like that. Is that more or less how it's organized?
Uh, the notion of cause in the war is continuous, but I think you've probably got most of the discussion. So if you feel it's lacking, it's going to continue to be lacking.
Yeah, because it felt lacking. That was just slavery. No, that just sounds like bullshit. It doesn't seem. There must have been other stresses, not just slavery.
Shelby Foote will say in the documentary, though, that slavery, the desire to fight slavery, was not necessarily a ruse by Lincoln, but sort of like a campaign push as opposed to the reality. The reality of the war was they were fighting for national integration, as opposed to, you know, notion that states can decide largely how to define their own existence.
Yeah, a union where you cannot leave is not a union. It's a forced partnership. It's a hostage situation. Okay, so my thinking is the United States, quote unquote, it's not a union. It's a compelled confederacy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just don't pretend that it's a union. Okay.
This is actually pertinent to our general discussion because people always ask me, it's like, when did the United States start going south, or when did it start manifesting, certain tendencies which were anti-republicanism in a small r kind of sense? And my response is always the Civil War and Lincoln and creating the imperial presidency,
Yeah.
because that is use in Ken Burns' documentary will kind of show it obliquely. I think you could show it more directly, which is to say that as a result of that war and the decision that you states go fuck off, are you're going to follow our orders here. You fundamentally recreated the notion. In fact, Shelby Foote said something very brilliant in that documentary. So forgive the tangent I'm going off, but it's actually pertinent to this discussion. He
Hmm.
says, before, the phrase of the United States is, you would say the United States are, and everybody understood what that meant. There's a collection of states that are federated together, but there are multiple bodies in that politic.
Hmm.
After the Civil War, the United States is,
Right.
meaning
Right.
that there's a collective identity there as a result of that war. I
Yeah.
bring it up here is because the tensions in that, and I don't say the conflicts that we're experiencing now are a result of that Civil War being unresolved. I don't think it really is the case that we're arguing about other things,
Hmm.
but that cleavage is starting to happen, and pretty soon I wouldn't be surprised if people are going to start wanting to say the United States are, because we're not getting along that clearly, and perhaps to a certain extent some of us are becoming more and more willing to say, I would love to kind of go our own way as opposed to having to follow this shithead. So, just
Yeah,
a thought to keep in mind.
because what's happened is that Lauren Southern did that Farmlands video. I haven't gotten around to watching it, but it's a hefty piece of
I
work.
did, by the way.
How?
I did watch it
What's it
all.
like?
Pretty good. It's shorter than I had anticipated.
Oh, how
70
long?
minutes.
70 minutes. Okay.
Uh, yeah. So to me, that's light.
Yeah.
It does a very good job of what these kind of documentaries do, which is I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to people on a personal level, getting their stories, some high level context to give you a sense, but really the push of it is going to the white farmers
Right.
who survived, frankly, and getting their perspective. And then a few interviews with the more extremists. Well, one with an extremist member of the more socialist and
What was it
radical
like?
black leaders. She's like, "We're going to take the land back because I do not want to listen to what you have to say," and shit like that. I'm very paraphrasing there. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, but it
But that's
basically like leftist, kind of like
so, so,
communistic kind of bullshit, right?
there's from a younger woman, there's some leftist communist kind of bullshit. The creepier one is the guy who's a high enough leader in, I think, the ANC,
Uh
the
huh.
African National Congress, who, when asked about this land appropriation, is answering in wishy-washy language and just making you more and more confused, which is, I know exactly what's happening here. It's like he is covering his ass against things that are embarrassing to have to say if you had to say it explicitly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that was pretty compelling as well. You have to, it and I think Lauren she knows exactly what's going on here, and I think she explicitly says that. But for those who are watching, when you encounter that bit, you just keep in mind, that's the dynamic at play in that discussion. But it's compelling. It's compelling. But sorry,
No,
I
no, 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 not at
distracted
all.
you from
Well,
what
it's
you wanted to say.
the problem that we're having, get right down to it, is a problem of believing that we're all equal, and we're not. I mean, some of us are more equal than others, and some of us are just naturally better bred than others. Look, I had the opportunity recently to be around some horses, thoroughbred horses. And just at a glance, you could tell the difference. You could tell the quality animal from from the horse that was you know, just a horse. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was not just like the breadth of it, but it was just the quality of the coat of the horse. The look and gleam in its eye. And it wasn't because the one horse was treated and was pampered and the other was not. No, it was just objective quality differences. And human beings were animals. Let's not kid ourselves. And there are people who are just better bred. And recently, I was walking here in Kharkov. I was walking from my apartment to the office, and it's hot as blazes, right? And so I was passing, and there's this park, and there was this sort of like a bum, just like lying there, okay, taking some shade and taking a nap. I don't know, a problem with that, but he was a bum. I just glanced at him, I knew, he was just lesser quality. And then just down the street, I come across this nice couple, college kids, and you could tell, the way they moved, their look. It's not that they were in fresh clothes and they'd taken a shower that morning or some shit like that. It was more. They were just made of better stuff, okay, and you could tell that the guy who was like taking a nap there, he was always going to be, I mean, at the same age or as children. Look, you see the difference, okay? You see the difference, and to pretend otherwise is just foolish. And so I look at South Africa and I see what's going to happen. It's going to be exactly the same as Zimbabwe. You look at pictures of South Africa from 50 years ago, back when the whites were running the whole show, and Cape Town was a vibrant city, and it was nice and clean and spotless. And you see it now, and it's a shithole. It is a third world shithole. Cape Town used to be like a nice city, a global city, and now it's not. And South Africa had something going for it. Now it does not. South Africa, hell, Zimbabwe or Zaire, or what did they call it before? Rhodesia, used to
Yeah.
be the breadbasket of Africa. And now, they're starving, And South Africa, it's going to be the same goddamn thing. We're going to have, another We Are the World for the fucking South Africans, because they're going to have killed off or kicked out all of the white people. And it's just going to be like these fucking ANCers. And it's not the fact that they're commies, and that's bad enough. It's that the fact that they are a lesser people. And we have to start admitting that fact and facing up to it. Because it's a little bit tiresome that we continue with this fiction that everybody's the same. They're not. I mean, there are quality people and there are people who don't have those qualities, who are not of quality people. And I'm sure that I'm going to get flagged for being a racist or some shit like that. But I'm tired of this fiction. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a fiction that our group of people, Western society only participates in. The Chinese, the
Yeah.
Russians, the Japanese, they don't worry about this. They know exactly
What's
what's
what?
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a good documentary that you see referenced on the internet all the time and this could very well happen after the Africans fuck things up again, is that the Chinese will come in and try to, be the next colonialist. But there was a good documentary of like a
Oh
representative
yeah,
from a
it's
Chinese
famous.
development
Yeah.
company or like
Yeah.
a railroad company goes to one of the African countries. And he's talking to like a black guy. He says, the fucking white people, left you all these things. They left it for us and we learned from them and used it and built it. You threw away, all these years of history and you wasted, the gifts they gave you. How stupid can you be?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's true. And the African is just staring off, resentful because it's true. See,
Yeah.
with that face of like that stone face that just masks real anger, but not anger at the Chinese guy, anger at the fact that what he's saying is absolutely true, and the blacks threw away the colonial infrastructure. Because all of the colonies had tremendous infrastructure, and they just pissed it away. I'm reading this Dictator Land book, about the African countries, and they all murder each other. They're all so pathetic. They're also so pathetic, and they have no kind of civility, no concept of any kind of rule of law. It's ruled by whoever's got the biggest machete, and that's what they use, by the way. They use machetes to chop each other up like fucking like butchers. It's just they are ruled by butchers who rob and commit butchery. That's all that they know. They're just savages. I'm sorry, man.
So it's funny, and I'm going to say something here that will piss off the lefties, but it's true. So the version of Marxism and socialism people often spout this time is third worldism, which is largely Maoism, a
Yeah.
version of Stalinism, which is basically you can easily turn it into fascism if you really want to, but the idea that the brown people are somewhat special, to the victims of these colonial influences of the capitalists of the West. When Marx was writing about this, he said no, capitalism has a civilizing influence. In fact, Marx thought that capitalism was one of the greatest creative forces on the earth. The things his idea was you take it to the next level because it has inherent contradictions. But his point, particularly like with India and other places, that no, you bring capitalism in, it breaks down all this stupid shit that these guys kind of do. I don't think he's perfectly gets the point on that. It's not just capitalism that does that, but he recognized that, hey, no, there is the act of colonialism actually does try to fix a situation that barbarism and feudalism doesn't understand, and the local tribe zone. And if you I even saw a letter the other day of like Marx writing about like Jews, and he's like, he doesn't like, Marx never really got along with Jews, but he hated black people as well. I got to find that letter and post it to you. It's
What's it say?
oh, he's using the like these fucking niggers and this, that, and the other kind of
Oh
thing. I
well,
gotta find the
Einstein
letter.
was also a racist.
Oh, every bearded old white man from Germany apparently doesn't like black people.
Yeah. Well, it's that the thing is, see, we've been so conditioned. You and I have been so conditioned to say only nice things about the browner people. But the fact of the matter is, in the aggregate, not individually, but in the aggregate, they're a fucking mess. I'm sorry, they're a fucking mess. Here's another thing. Everybody talks about how the West is so awful and evil, blah 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 blah, and then if it's so fucking evil, why do all the fucking brown people want to come here? Explain that to me. I'd like to know that, please. Look, it's so frustrating to be reading this Dictatorland book, which is about Africa. It is so frustrating because, see, these people, they have no conception of just basic rule of law, and they don't understand how to make a compromise and figure out a way that both sides are sure that the other isn't going to fuck them over. They constantly try to fuck each other over. Shelby Foote in the documentary says that that Americans always say that everybody's very firm, but no, the great genius of America is not being firm, but rather compromise. That's America's great genius of being able to
Yes.
compromise, which is absolutely true. But here's the thing: see, in order to be able to compromise, you have to have the true belief, the knowledge, the certainty that both sides of a compromise are going to live up to their side of the bargain, that there will be the rule of law, that you're not going to try to cheat the other guy. You're going to live up to your part of the bargain, and the other guy's going to live up to his side of the bargain, and that way you both, make out all right. Maybe not as good as you'd like, but better than if you'd been fighting it out, right? But the Africans don't have this concept. They don't have this concept at all. They figure that the only reason they are abiding by some rule is to bide their time before they strike and fuck over the other guy. It's just, oh man, it's just so frustrating. It's a,
This was understood in the 19th century. When you're done with your point, I actually found the phrases from Marx. If you'll indulge me, I'll quote
read
this,
it,
but I want
read
to
it.
complete.
Well,
All right,
well
so
the point I just want to make, the point I wanted to make is that the more I read about African history, which I'm doing now in a more or less systematic way, the more I read about African history, the more I despise all these people and the entire continent because they seem so pathetic. They just seem so pathetic. They are lazy. They don't do anything to help themselves. Their leaders are all corrupt. The people just trudge along. And what's weird is that they trudge along, and yet at the same time, they are willing to put up with the most ferociously awful treatment. They're like mules, frankly, as a people. And it's depressing because I don't want to think of uh, other human beings as little more than mules, but their collective behavior is such that you wind yourself inevitably thinking that. Inevitably thinking to yourself, these people are fucking mules. These people will never do anything to advance their situation. They just sit there, mule
Yeah,
like.
my response to that is always to say, look, I'm not going to hate you just because you are in existence and you are who you are, but I recognize that you're not in a position to be a leadership, and it's just what I can tell you, and you're not gonna advance in that front. It's just that's just a coldness to it. But yeah, I fundamentally agree. So here's the quote. So things to keep in mind: Marx was very pro-U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Even during the Civil War, he wrote a letter of congratulations to Lincoln, saying, you have to fight the South and to preserve, the liberty of America. Funny enough,
Yeah.
but needless to say, so this is what happens when the United States annexed California after the Mexican War. Marx responds, "It is a misfortune that the magnificent California was seized from the lazy Mexicans who did not know what to do with it." Or and then Marx's good friend Engels shares it that he says, "In America, we have witnessed the conquest of Mexico and have rejoiced at it. It is to the interest of its own development that Mexico will be placed under the tutelage of the United States." They thought the United States, the dynamism of not just the capitalism but the liberalism in the United States would carry it, and basically be a civilizing influence around. And this is what Marx wrote about Africans. It is now completely clear to me that he, as it is provided by his cranial formation and his hair, descends from the Negroes who had joined Moses' exodus from Egypt, assuming that his mother or grandmother on the paternal side had not inbred with a Negro or nigger. It's censored. Now, this union of Judaism and Germanism with a basic Negro subsistence might produce a peculiar product.
By the way, he probably used the N word because it wouldn't have been censored if you read the word Negro over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Good
So,
God,
so
yeah.
yeah, this is very common of that time, right? It's not, and this is why you will increasingly see people resentful of Marx being brought up anywhere, because a lot of Marxists think of things as class struggle. They don't like to necessarily call out race as the big identity politic issue to be concerned with, and so the identitarians will just say, brocialists, white guys, fuck you, we're going to go our own way. So this stuff is going to go out, and all they will do is read these quotes and have their justification for it. But that's the thing. Even the radical left at the past time, you see the thoughts that they had here. They recognized that, look, not all peoples of the world are even created equally, even though they say workers of the world unite. You know what I mean? So, if that's the case, we are in a very interesting development here where we're going to have completely different takes on this. And even old guys like this and how their way of thinking aren't going to even hold up. So, this is why I laugh when I see people who are, the Democratic Socialist thinks that Octavia is really going to push the true
Ocasio. You
socialism.
keep calling her
Ocasio, or
Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, not
I,
Octavia. Octavia is she was a Roman wife of a Roman emperor. I forget which one.
I'm probably thinking of that author, that Octavia, what's her name?
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Yeah, who cares?
yeah,
But needless to say, this is the fun complications that history involves.
yeah.
So
The thing that yeah, I'm starting to realize that it's um it's an inability to see reality, of just accepting reality. We have certain ideals, and they're all very nice, but ideals should not get in the way of looking at reality as it actually is. And I think that that's the problem. And we have a very rich and privileged class of people who refuse to look at reality as it is. And they start insisting that we all pretend to see things that aren't there or pretend to not see things that are there. And I think that's the bottom line of the problem. We have to start looking at things as they actually are. And however painful and uncomfortable that might make us. But we cannot simply hide our heads in the sand and not look at things because these things are going to destroy our society. I mean, let's face facts, they are destroying our society. Western Europe is lost. I mean, that's just a given. Okay? The Birmingham is going to be a minority white British citizen city. Okay, did you know that Birmingham, the second largest city? You could say, okay, London, it's such an international city, blah blah blah. But Birmingham, yeah, it's the second largest city of the UK, but it's a
But
fucking,
it's in the Midlands.
it's
It's in
yeah,
the Midlands. It's not like it's a port of call.
yeah, exactly. There's no reason to fucking go to Birmingham unless you fucking live there, and it is going to become a minority white British city in just a few years. Okay, I forget when it's gonna be. Wait, I'll look it up real fast. But
Yeah, I saw that. I'm willing to bet. I think it's by the end of the decade, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong.
yeah, yeah, something like that. I mean, it's yeah. What's it, here it says majority minority white Brits set to become minority in Birmingham with 50,000 locals currently unable to speak English. Like now, okay, now is this gonna happen? Jesus
Oh,
Christ,
okay, so it's
it's happened.
odds are it's already happened. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Okay, 42.1% of people in Birmingham said they were non-white British in the 2011 census. Okay, uh, that was 7 years ago. So now it's a majority minority city. Can you believe that? I mean, it's just shocking, right? Birmingham. I mean, that was like I can't believe it. So it's just right. And the other thing,
Well,
fifty
remember,
thousand people can't speak English. Can you believe that? Oh man.
remember, according to the BBC, what does it mean to be British is about following rules of law and liking curry.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. You know. Oh man. So, look, Western Europe, kiss it goodbye. Just kiss it goodbye. The cradle of our civilization is dead. And let's face facts. Western civilization created the society that we have, the world that we have. East Asia, South Asia, Africa, they all want to be like us Europeans. They all want to be like us, okay? And it's being overrun by people who don't care about it. Look, in 100 years, Notre Dame will be pulled down, okay? There will be no Notre Dame, or it'll be turned into a mosque, okay? That's the reality of it. So we have to start preparing for after the collapse. Shit, we're getting blackpilled.
Well, I'll tell you, this is the theory I had. It's actually not unrelated to the Civil War discussion, but it's broader than that. One what is I think the biggest thing that kind of caused us to kind of slow down in our tracks? The closing of the frontier. The idea that, one of the things you always had available to you as a European or whatever, if shit's going bad or you feel like you don't have a chance to make your way, there's some untamed land that you can start rebuilding things. You can do your own thing. When the frontier closed in America, things started to shift really fast towards Gilded Age shit,
Yeah, yeah.
weird perversions. Same thing with Europeans, colonization, regardless of whether or not you think we had the right to control other people, the fact that there was no other place for you to go kind of stifles you in a certain way. And that's the thing. Other thing that I think is happening. Everybody, especially in Europe, like I told you, my impression of the UK when I said they couldn't even get the energy to bury the dead in a week.
Mm,
I feel like, the idea that you have some sort of frontier or thing to strive for or a new thing to do or something to build, that's been gone for a long time.
yeah.
And so I feel like that's somewhat related to this. And this is partly why I think people are trying to be sympathetic to Elon Musk's vision of space. I'm sympathetic to it to a certain extent, which is we need to start coming up with the new fucking frontier pretty soon if we're going to survive at all, because we are goddamn listless right now, and listlessness gives way to boredom, which gives way to perversion, which gives way to weakness, which gives way to death.
Mm, yeah. The thing is also, see, I look at European history, right? And Europe, ever since the fall of the Roman Empire, which you could date at what? Let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say by 800 AD, it was gone, right? The history of Europe from 800 AD forward, it was just a shithole. It was a continued shithole, right? Compared to China, compared to India, compared to the Middle East, it was a shithole, a backwater, a nothing, right? It was worse than Africa. And it took a millennium for things to look up, and that millennial of growth and development eventually led to the technological civilization that we currently enjoy. I mean, we are the children of the poor people of the global neighborhood. And what happened
Mhm.
was that we were the children of the poor people, but the poor people who got rich, and we, the children and grandchildren, we didn't appreciate our inheritance. We didn't value it, and so we frittered it away. And so other poor people are going to be taking it over. You know, that seems to me the thing that's going on. That's the thing that's happening to our civilization in real time. We who inherited this wonderful civilization did not value it, did not realize its importance. I also, I'm very not pessimistic, but I'm realistic. There is no reason to think that we cannot have another Dark Ages. To think that we can never have another Dark Ages, that we can never have a period of time of history whereby we go backwards in terms of technology, in terms of welfare of the people, where there is a shrinkage of the population. I believe that we can perfectly well have a dark ages such that we lose population, we lose the technology that we have. There's this I forget the name of it, the Antikytherian device. It was this device that they fished out of some Greek harbor, right?
I remember that. Yeah, it was a rudimentary computer in
Yeah,
theory.
it was a rudimentary computer that was incredibly exact. They used some, basically an MRI to scan inside it to see what was inside it, and they figured out from the gears and such that it was a way to figure out the position of the stars and the different planets and the moons by just gears, and they were machined gears, and there was such precision, okay, that it was like as good as any computer today. Only it was mechanical, of course. It was analog, but still, it did the job. And that technology was lost for over 1,000 years, about 1,500 years to be exact. 1,500 years that technology was lost. What's to say that the technology that we have today is not lost again? What's to say that all the things that we value and know and what have you, the civilization we have, it's not all gone? And it's like some post-apocalyptic shit. And they're not going to call it post-apocalyptic. They're just going to call it, this is life. Because people in the Middle Ages weren't calling it the Middle Ages. They were just calling it, we're just living. I think that it's perfectly within the realms of the possible, and the fact that our current the people today are unwilling to value what we have, it's just so goddamn disappointing. It's
Well,
just
so the Dark Ages is certainly a possibility that could happen. Another way you can look at it, another comparable thing, and this is interestingly enough, I look at it in an optimistic way. It sounds odd, but as I explain it, maybe you'll see why I'm coming from it that way. Could be like China in the 19th century. By that I mean China in the 19th century. It was only about 100 years away from like a solid, stable-ish society, but it became introverted and didn't really care about leading a lot of things. There was a lot of infighting amongst groups. It was very easy for foreign influences to basically say, the Russians are going to control the north of China, Britain the coast, Japan the northern
yeah,
coast, Germany this part, the other. Eventually, it takes 100 years or more for them to finally say, "What the fuck are we doing?" And they push out everything, and now China's on its path to being China, what
yeah.
have you. This is why I say it's optimistic, because that could conceivably happen in the West as well. Eventually, the people who remain are going to say, "What the fuck is this?" It's going to be harder to fight because it isn't just like foreign influence in
Well,
terms of business and everything.
it's
It's
there's
actual
a
people.
key difference though, is that see the Chinese were not invaded by foreign people. They were still
Yes,
Chinese,
that's what I said. Yeah.
ethnically Chinese. They were controlled by foreigners, but they weren't invaded by foreigners. I think that's the big difference. And I'm just very black pilled because it just seems that everybody's just fucking things up so phenomenally, and they just seem blind to what's going on. But I mean, oh man, okay, look, fuck it. We're going on like just about an hour of podcast, so I think we should wind it down so I can go and
Sure.
just commit suicide in the bathroom. You know,
Well, I don't. Staining porcelain, it's a bad idea.
Oh man, oh, come on. Well, I'll just get the little blood
You,
remover shit.
you want to be like Frankie Pentangeli. Let's take a bath.
Slit my head. No, but it's so goddamn depressing to talk about this shit, you know? Because because people think you're fucking crazy. But it's so fucking obvious. And so many times people seem to think that I'm crazy that I start to wonder, am I crazy? Am I seeing reality as it actually is, or am I out of my off my rocker? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
does this happen to you where you start talking to people about this stuff and you think to yourself, well, am I crazy or am I on the level? You know what I mean?
Well, sometimes I wonder to myself, did I just go so far as to say, like, make the case to something that's more depressing than I wanted to believe, or I just like I found the logical path to say, oh fuck, this was worse than I thought, and now I'm sad. Kind of thing.
Yeah,
That happens a lot.
yeah. I'm just so I'm so disappointed in um, how we in the West are just fucking it up. It's just disappointment, you know. Um, okay, fuck it. Let's call it a podcast. Hey, by the way, have you been listening to the Rush album? You haven't. Oh man, how am I going to convert you to fucking Rush if you don't fucking listen to the fucking album I tell you to fucking listen to?
I take my own speed to these things.
Oh yeah.
I am not a I am not a uncontrollable river, but a steady stream.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That metaphor made you seem much smaller. I mean, a river is bigger than a stream, right? You know. But listen, the one thing I want to talk about at some point in the future is I want you to listen to 2112, and I want to talk about that album. And so, when do you figure you can listen to it so that our audience can know too? Because I want to talk about 2112. I don't want to do a video about 2112, but I enjoy talking about it, especially talking to somebody who's listening to it for the first time. So when can we make that happen?
Let's do the end of next week so people have enough time to listen to it.
Okay. So yeah, but you have to listen to it at least 15 times. You know, I mean at least. Okay, 20 times better. 20. You got to listen.
Now I'm gonna go to the bathtub and slip. It's like the Romans; they let them take the families take care of it. Sorry, I can't help but not make that impression. But needless to say, yes, I'll listen to it.
Yeah, no, because I think that the 2112 album is just a terrific album. It's by Rush. It was released in 1976. It is about the individual against society, and it is a devastating album. And it is devastating for the final line of the album, of the song, rather, the song 2112, because the song 2112 is the first half of the album. The second half is just a series of shorter songs. But I'm talking about the 2112 song, or song cycle, suite, really. And the last line is really, really important because it casts an ambiguity that is really interesting that I want to talk to you about, Benway, because I think that you'll get a lot out of it. And I want to compare and contrast your impressions to my impressions of it. So, okay. So for next week, we'll be listening to 2112. And also, we're reading The Attention Merchants by Tim Wu. Tim Wu is his name?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. You've been getting through that?
Well, like I said, I just got back from a trip. I told myself I wanted to read this while I was on my business trip,
Right.
but like an idiot rushing to get to the airport, I forgot to pack it. So it's progress is not much. I've read like the first chapter or so.
Yeah. So listen, guys, you who are listening to us, and if you got to this point of the podcast, you're like our diehard fans, or totally psychotic, or perhaps drifting away to sweet slumber in Never Neverland, and so it doesn't matter to you. But we are listening to Rush's 2112, and we are reading Tim Wu's The Attention Merchants. And at some point at the end of next week, we'll be talking about them, probably in like separate episodes or something like that. Or maybe we could do like one episode and talk about like, media we're listening to and reading now. That would be a good idea. You want to do that?
Let's do that.
Okay. Okay. So this is Coach Red Pill. Dr. Benway, would you like to close us out?
What's a good way to close this out?
Music is playing in the background. It's my music that I've written. It's really cool. Domo arigato, Mr. Robot.
All right. So yeah, so rather than follow Coach's orders of listening to Rush, now you have to listen to Styx, and I don't mean Styx Hexenhammer. I mean
And Styx, the band.
the band.
And you know, Kilroy Was Here, one of the worst concept albums ever, but it's pretty fucking funny. It's a funny album. Anyway, so with that, we bid you a fond farewell. Take it easy.
Take it easy.